And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25, the show devoted exclusively to St. Mary's University and its athletic programs. I'm Dean Beckman, joined by Sports Information Director Donnie Netto. Donnie, we're back with another week here of Cardinals Athletics. Before we get to that, though, a little bit later on in the program, we'll be featuring women's basketball, and head coach Brent Pollari will be here, and we'll get to ask him about how the season has gone. And we haven't had Brent on the program yet, so it'll be good to get him in here and talk about his Cardinals team.
Yeah, he kept dodging the bullet every time we'd ask him to be on the show. He'd have something come up. So it'll be great to have Brent on. And I'm really excited to kind of talk about the transition from last year to this year. Last year being his first year as the women's head coach into year two, and kind of, you know, what changes he's seen from himself in terms of coaching, and what items he's seen, you know, in terms of his players and in changes. So it'll be nice to have him on, and you know, they're enjoying another good season, and looking forward to chatting women's basketball.
All right, so before we get to that, though, let's look at all of the other sports from this past week, and we'll start with men's basketball action. And the men's basketball team, they had a really tight game, a close game that they lost right at the buzzer against McAllister College. So things not going the Cardinals' way right now, and that particular game kind of has, you know, exemplified how things have gone lately for St. Mary's.
Yeah, I think, you know, the thing about that game against McAllister is, as you always try to find things, you know, in the positive, and there were so many in that game that, you know, that the Cardinals played very well. Offensively, they did a much better job of working the ball inside. So many times we've talked this year about their prowess on the outside. Well, they really did a good job of working the ball inside against McAllister. And Wiley Farron had a career night. He equaled his career high with 24 points, and you know, they're getting good performance from Eli Cave. He had 13 points. You know, Bradley Hill, who's been moved into the starting lineup, he had 13 points. So they're getting a lot of offense. But this time it was really as much inside as it was outside. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, you know, they lost in the last, basically in the last second, 7/10 of a second left when McAllister scored the game-winning basket. But I think that the positive in that is so many games this year right now, they're in it to the end, and they're putting themselves in that position to win. And unfortunately, they just haven't been able to get over that hump. But I think the positive is, you know, you're in position. You're learning what it takes to win those kind of basketball games, and sometimes you have to take your lumps to kind of learn that. But you know, they are getting themselves in that position, and hopefully as the home stretch here unfolds, they'll be able to pick up some W's. They've got a big game against Hamlin on Wednesday, and then they return home again on Saturday against St. Olaf. It would be nice to have that doubleheader on Saturday with the Olies here on the St. Mary's campus. So a lot of basketball to be played. It's a tough week for the Cardinals because they do play Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, which is always difficult. And you know, we can talk to Coach Pollari about the fact that it makes it very hard to kind of game plan for your opponent, because you just finished the game, you need to kind of rest, and boom, you're playing again. So you know, it's a tough stretch for the Cardinals, but you know, hopefully they can just continue to play good, solid basketball. And I think that, you know, you do that, you put yourself in position to win, and the wins will come.
And we should mention, too, that double header against St. Olaf right here on HBC, the women's game at 1, followed by the men's game at 3 o'clock. One other thing, Donnie, about the men's basketball team, you had mentioned their post-play inside presence. One player who isn't necessarily a true post player, but has really given them some good minutes and points on the inside, Q. Smith-Pugh. He's great at driving, slashing to the basket, but he can post up down there, and he has a really good inside scoring and rebounding presence.
You know, he is as fun to watch as anybody that the Cardinals have, and you're right. I mean, he has all of the tools. He can play from the outside, he can play from the inside, and I think he brings that energy. We talk about the need to you know, to play at a high level, and Q certainly brings that. And not to plug St. Mary's at all, but a great story on smumn.edu about Q and his entrepreneurial skills. A really entertaining story about what he's kind of doing with his you know, with his future, and what he plans to do in the future once he graduates from St. Mary's. But a great story by Deb Nargang on Q and his entrepreneurial skills.
All right, we'll be sure to check that out. Also, Donnie, as we go now, let's go to men's hockey, because they had a really exciting weekend matchup against a ranked team, and came out with an exciting 5-5 shootout win on Saturday night.
Yeah, I talked to Coach Moore. He's been here for quite a few years now, and he said that those two games were probably the most exciting, best played two-game series that he's been involved in during his time here at St. Mary's. A tough 4-3 loss in the opener up in Augsburg, and then, as you mentioned, a 5-5 tie with St. Mary's getting that extra point with a 2-1 shootout win. A great game. It was exciting for the fans. It was high scoring, not so much for the coach because obviously they don't want to give up 5 goals. But it was one of those games that was back and forth. St. Mary's would take the lead, Augsburg would get it back. St. Mary's built a 2-goal lead. Augsburg came back and tied it. It was fast-paced. It was exciting. And really, the key is that the Cardinals did come away with 2 points for that game. You're going against the league-leading team, ranked number 11 in the nation, and for them to come away with 2 of the 6 possible points, a definite positive step as they really get into the crunch now with just 4 games for them left in the conference series. They're right in the hunt for the playoffs, and so bringing that momentum into this weekend against Gustavus is going to be huge. Then they'll close out their schedule against St. John's and then have to kind of wait because the rest of the conference will finish theirs the following week in terms of the schedule.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of things. I think it shows how good again and how balanced the conference is. St. Mary's 6-5-1. But they're right there in 3rd place. There's a lot of teams hovering right around that 500 mark. Yeah,
no question. And as you try to look at the standings and do a little figuring of what needs to happen for them to get in, it's almost impossible. It really is. The keys right now is St. John's is at 17 points. Concordia is at 17 points. We're at 22 points. So the St. John's series, of course, is going to be very huge, but so is this Gustavus series. Record-wise, Gustavus does not have a very good record. They've only got 1 conference win so far, but so many of their games have been by 1 goal. They've lost several overtime games. They've got a number of ties in there. So it's a scary weekend because on paper, it should be a cakewalk for the Cardinals, but I know Coach Moore continues to harp that you've got to prepare and you've got to be ready for these guys. Whether it's Augsburg or Gustavus, you've got to be ready to be able to put that same type of game on the ice every night. And hopefully they come away with 2 wins this weekend, and really that'll really put them in a good position heading into their final 2 games.
And it's certainly a St. Mary's weekend here on HBC TV 25. We mentioned we'll have the basketball doubleheader Saturday here on HBC, but also the Friday night men's hockey game against Gustavus. And Donnie, you and I will be on the call on that one. And it's kind of, when you look at the schedule and where they're at, and considering they're playing the Gusties, who are toward the bottom of the conference, in some ways, because of that bye week at the end of the season, it becomes sort of a must-win game for St. Mary's.
No question, and you hate to say must-win, but you're so right in that there are so many things that need to fall into place because they don't play that last weekend. They need to control their destiny now, and I think that if they and it starts on Friday. You can't even really look to Saturday or to the St. John's series. It all comes down to playing well on Friday night, and you add another wrinkle into that, and that Friday is senior night for the Cardinals and their 9 graduating seniors. So there's another emotional piece to this whole puzzle in that, senior nights are always special nights, but it's always, a little bit harder to keep focused on the game. And so they've got a lot to worry about on Friday, and hopefully they can come out and play the way they did last weekend, because they are definitely playing very good hockey, and they need to make sure that they keep it to their level and not have a letdown this weekend.
Well, you and I certainly don't need any more wrinkles, but the women's hockey team sent Augsburg a wrinkle this past week by winning against Augsburg, a ranked team, 2-1 in a very exciting Saturday matchup.
No question, especially coming off of a 5-1 loss the first night against Augsburg at St. Mary's, and for them to come away with that 2-1 win, it's a great boost for the team. And I think as they head into their last 3 weeks of the season, it certainly is a nice springboard to hopefully get some momentum. As they're sitting right now, they're second to last in the conference, but with so many points still at stake, they're not out of the playoff picture. If they can put together a nice run here, and it'll start this weekend against Gustavus, a very, very, very tough team. But if they can play the way they did against Augsburg, there's not a team in the conference that they can't beat. And I know, talking to Coach Manor, that's what he said to me as well, in that, if we can put that kind of effort together, get the leadership that they got, Jamie Henderson and Cassie Lean getting the goals. Cassie probably played her best game in that 2-1 win, getting a goal and an assist. And we've talked so much about her ability with her speed, the things that she can create. And, she proved that against Augsburg. And they need that kind of effort, that kind of complete team effort. Ashley Corcoran in goal had a phenomenal game with 32 saves, so she's doing her part in goal. And that's what they need. You need that complete effort. And hopefully, as they're moving forward, they'll be able to carry the momentum of that one win into the next 3 weeks. What I'd like to see is that 2-1 game be played on Friday night when we get to watch it. They still have not won a game at home this year, which really is surprising. And I know Coach Manor, when I talked to him, he was a little surprised at that. It's like, that's the one place you want to win. You want to win at home, as our teams kind of say, we want to protect the nest. And right now, they're doing it the opposite way. They're winning on the road and struggling at home. So hopefully this weekend against Gustavus, they can flip that around a little bit.
All right, and swimming and diving, the women hosted a triangular with Augsburg and Hamlin. The men, a dual meet with Hamlin. So how did things go in the home pool for St. Mary's?
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Always nice on a final home meet to kind of send off your seniors. And seniors, of course, did a great job again last weekend. The women finished second in that triangular. The men lost in their duel to Hamlin, but some outstanding individual performances. And we'll continue to use the same names. Grace Van Beest had a great performance. Zoe Schatz is doing a good job. Kizzy Bell had a couple of top 3 finishes. So the top of the Cardinal lineup is really doing well. Chloe Morrison had a good weekend as well. And for the men, Joe Tonda continues to be that guy. And Lucas Garadz had a really solid weekend as well. And Nicholas Sawchuk did a nice job. They've got one big weekend this weekend up at the Minnesota Challenge at the University of Minnesota. And then they've got a weekend off, and then it's the conference championship. So their season it's time to start tapering and to start peaking right now and get ready for the Minnesota Challenge and then the conference championships.
So many sports, so little time, Donnie. Just a minute here to cover a couple of sports. Track and field at the University of Wisconsin River Falls. Familiar names again: Becca Dupe, Maria Miserelli.
Yeah, there's three of their 4 top finishes right there. Desmond Stewart on the guy's side had one as well. And you've got to tip your cap to Jovan Newsom. He broke the school record. He and 2 others went to UW Stout for their invitational, and he ran in the 3,000 meter there and broke the school record, his own record, by 3 seconds, which is really impressive this early in the season. And we certainly can't count out our tennis teams. Both opened the season with great 9-0 wins against Martin Luther last Friday, and then ran into Buzzsaw in Carleton, one of the top teams in the conference, falling 9-0 in both of those matches. But a good start for them, getting that season opening win and then kicking off the conference, kind of seeing what the top of the conference is all about.
Yeah, sort of went as expected there, right?
Absolutely,
So,
yep.
All right, so stay tuned. We'll bring in Brent Pollari, the head coach for the women's basketball team. That's next here on HBC. And welcome back to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC. Dean Beckman, Donnie Netto, and Brent Pollari, the head coach for the women's basketball team, joining us here on HBC. And Brent, thanks for being on the program. And you're from Montana originally, so now that you're in your 2nd season, you have a little bit more information to compare. Montana, Minnesota, what do you think?
Yeah, don't quite have the skiing mountains and stuff here, but we have some cross-country skiing stuff. But the bluffs and everything reminds me a lot of Bozeman, where I'm from, and yeah, I like it.
Good.
Coach, as I talked about in the first segment, I'm curious to see from your perspective the difference between that first year and your second year for you as the head coach of the Cardinals.
You know, the first year we were really scrambling. I got hired while school had already started, just trying to get the team together, get recruiting done, even scheduling games. We didn't have games scheduled. I mean, it was just trying to pick up pieces last year, then trying to get the team to all buy in and get our team concept kind of going. Was more of last year. This year, we got a year and a half of recruiting. We're kind of rolling with that. Got our offenses in, our defenses in, so things just transitioned a little more smooth this year.
Coach, one of the things that has got to make your job difficult is that really 3 of your top performers you don't get to see until until the fall sports are over. You've got Brandy and Brittany Flom both playing volleyball, and you've got Emma playing soccer. How difficult is that as you start the season to kind of get things going, because you're missing three of your pieces?
It's tough because they really miss out on the fundamental stuff, shooting, post work. So things that could really elevate their game, they don't really get a chance to get that with us. So it's more X's and O's and just trying to get them into pieces and get the horses running.
Yeah, we're related to that too. What about conditioning? I mean, obviously Emma playing soccer is going to be well conditioned, but basketball is a different pace, a little more stop and go and things like that. Same thing with Brandy and Brittany coming from volleyball. Is conditioning at all a factor?
It is, but you got some pretty tough kids there.
Right.
So
right.
that kind of
good
makes
athletes,
up for it. Yeah, we give them about a week off before, so we miss that
That's nice
too.
of you.
It's when you have tough kids like that, it makes up for some of the conditioning stuff. And then the fact that they have to play big minutes, they get caught up real quick.
Right,
so.
right, yeah.
And let's talk about the season so far. Are you pretty happy with where you're at right now?
Yes, I think the first half of the season we did really well, and with injuries and different things that happened, we're kind of decimated. We're still doing pretty well for what we've got. We love it when we have 10 people out of practice so we can go on offense and defense, but that's kind of a rare thing for us. But yeah, we're doing pretty well considering everything.
Well, 6-6 in the conference, 12-7 overall, and you mentioned some of the injuries, but it seems like some players have really stepped up and helped you out that way. Some players might be playing more minutes than what they were planning on, but by and large, I think they all see the success that's happening and are kind of buying into it.
Yeah, and they have to. We don't have a choice, really. I mean, I know we played one game when we first came back. I think we had 6.5 healthy people going for a game. And it was just kind of an emergency kind of feel, and I think we elevated ourselves to another level then. We need to get kind of back to that because we're kind of in the home stretch here.
Now, if you need for practices, Donnie would be happy to step in and take a charge or
We
two.
literally would take him. We would take him.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about the stretch run. And I had mentioned with the guys, they do have to play a couple Monday games, which makes it difficult. But, people are getting tired, they're getting banged up, and you've got 3 weeks left in the season, right in the heat of the playoff race. How do you keep the team focused and really playing at a very high level? Because that's not easy when you're playing as much as you guys do down the stretch.
Yeah, and I don't know how the guys do it. Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. I mean, you get done with a game, I'm watching film for hours late at night so that we can get practice going for the next day, and then you got a pregame practice and you got a game. I couldn't imagine another one in there. But yeah, you just have to try to keep focused, keep doing what you do, put the time in to get your scouts done, and then you want to balance rest too, and so it's kind of a juggle there.
Talk a little bit about, I'm always impressed with, and I was impressed last year, and I know we had this conversation, with the players who step in to replace graduated seniors. And you had a Michaela Meredith who did that last year, and a Haley Traum who did that last year. And this year, it kind of, to me, it looks like Lex is doing that, Audie's doing that a little bit. And, it seems like those people are really they kind of relish that role of, hey, okay, it's my turn to step into that. Maybe it's the high scorer role or whatever it may be, but you always seem to have people that are next up and ready to go.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of those two. I'm proud of the whole team, but those two, Lex has really stepped up this year. She's picked up defense, rebounding. She's always going to be a shooter for us. Bridget Audette playing on a torn ACL. My heart goes out to her, and I'm so happy she gets to play this year through it. But yeah, those two have stepped up big, and then other people. Brittany Flom's been everybody's playing. We're playing all of our players right now. So.
Coach, I was just kind of looking at the team stats here, and there's not a lot of differences between, as far as a differential goes, between your team and opponents' teams in a lot of the different categories. Where would you identify your team's strengths, your team's weaknesses? What do you still need to improve upon?
We got to get better at defense. Where everybody in our league plays a dribble drive, where they're putting their head down trying to get to the rim. And in the last few games, we've defended for about 25 seconds pretty well, and then the last 5, we don't. So just finishing out defensive plays. I think our strength all year last year and most of the year this year is we out-rebound people. Now, we haven't been doing that recently, but that's got to be our strength. That's the highest correlation to winning is rebound differential. So we got to get back to that. And then hopefully our shooting percentages go up a little bit too.
You know, we've talked a lot, and we talk about it with just about every sport, but talk about the difference between playing at home and on the road. You guys have been very successful at home, not only this year, but really in about the last 6 years. You guys have been, you know, it's almost a guaranteed win when you're at home. What is the biggest difference between when you're playing at home and when you play on the road?
You just got the comfort of doing your routine, being in your routine, having a little extra time, sometimes going through shoot-arounds where you don't get a shoot-around if you're on the road a lot. Those are probably the biggest difference, and just having the comfort of being where we practice every day. And having a crowd too helps. Yeah.
You know, one player we've talked a little bit about, but haven't really focused on yet is Emma Schaefer. And she has really had to take on the bulk of the point guard duties this year. Like, you don't really have necessarily a real true backup at point guard. And so talk about her growth in that area and the amount of minutes she's had to play.
Yeah, she's really had to, I mean, she's gassed a lot of times where she has to play when she's tired. But she's got that leadership role. She's got the savviness and just the heart that is kind of our heart of our team. I mean, she's the person that steps up and kind of keeps us afloat a lot of times.
One thing I find really interesting, and I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, but you look at your sport of basketball, and if you play a team twice in the season, like a Carleton, for example, you play them early, then you play them late. There can be a big difference between how you're playing early and how you're playing late. Whereas if you look at the hockey teams, they play Friday and then they play Saturday, and then they're done with that team. Do you kind of like the opportunity to have maybe a month between the time you play them the first time and the second because things may change? Or would you like to see a back-to-back maybe like the hockey teams do?
There's positives to both. One of the things I wouldn't like about the back-to-back is if you're injured, if you have people that are out, you can lose two that you don't get. Now that we're kind of injured, I would have liked to have some of them back-to-back early to get that going, but yeah.
Lastly here, Brent, Sam Jones, you know, definitely a senior on the team. We have documented here on HBC the accident, you know, with her sister this past summer. So talk about her play this year. She continues to be, it appears to me anyway, kind of the heart and soul of the team, kind of the on-court, off-court leader. Talk about Sam a little
She's
bit.
kind of a motherly figure, I'd say, to our team. And she just thrives in that role. I've been really impressed from where she was last year when we first got her to where she is now. She's just improved tremendously. So, yeah, she's really stepped it up big time, too, with us.
You have a new assistant coach this year. Tell us about Kristen, and I hope I don't get this wrong, Shabluski.
Awesome.
Right?
Yep.
All right, good.
Perfect.
So tell us about Kristen.
It's the team with the coaching names that you
Right.
really can struggle
Well,
with.
and living in Winona helps with
Yes,
that.
it
right?
does. Yes, it does.
Kristen's been amazing. She's awesome. She brings good energy to our team. Recruiting, she's been doing a really good job, and she connects with our players on a really good level, and that's something that is important.
So where did you find her from? What's her background?
Through the coaching ranks, people I coached with at Northern State, the new coach Meyer, recommended her, and then I talked to other people about her and kind of found her through that coaching ranks.
She's definitely a hard worker.
Yeah, she is. So as we look at the schedule, kind of rounding out the rest of the season here, what are you looking at? As we said, 500 right now in the conference, but definitely still in the hunt for a playoff spot. So as we look at the rest of the year here, what's kind of
These two
catching your
games
eye?
are going to be two of the biggest games, I think. We've got to get at least one, but we probably need both of them to be looking at the playoff hunt here. And so these are two winnable games that we have. We're not playing our best basketball right now, but I think we know where we are and how focused we need to be. And I think people understand that, hey, we don't have other players that are going to be coming. We need to do it ourselves here.
Right, so good. All right, Brent Pollari, the head coach for women's basketball. Thanks for being on the program, and HBC will be there Saturday for that Ole's doubleheader. So,
Okay.
All right, good. Stay tuned here to HBC. Donnie and I will be back to preview the week ahead in St. Mary's Athletics. That's next on HBC. And we're back here to wrap up this version of the Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. Dean Beckman along with Sports Information Director Donnie Netto. And Donnie, it was great to have Coach Pollari on the program. And I think you and I both feel he kind of downplayed how difficult it can be at the start of the season when you have three key contributors who are multi-sport athletes and you don't have them at your practice for the first couple of weeks of the season.
No question. And we've talked about that. I've talked about him about that a lot, and you know, they do miss out on a lot. And last year was probably the most difficult because it's a new coach putting in new systems and whatnot. But I think the thing that gets kind of lost in that struggle is just think how impressive it is that these three student athletes play a fall sport and then come back and play a winter sport as well, and not only just play but are very, very good. And I think that kind of gets forgotten because you're talking about how hard it is for Coach Pollari to adjust to not having them in the preseason practices when they've got to come in and put the soccer cleats away and the volleyball is done, and now you've got to all of a sudden put your sneakers on and start playing basketball, and boom, you're playing a game in 2 or 3 days and playing at a very high level. That's very difficult, and those three certainly should be applauded for what they are able to do, and the fact that they're all outstanding students. They really are true student athletes. They know how to manage their time to be able to do well in the classroom and then really excel on their fields of competition.
And over the years, we've had a lot of athletes go from winter to spring sports, such as Bob Kinney will do, who's on men's hockey, and of course baseball.
Right. It's neat to see. I really like, and it's one of the things that St. Mary's offers is the ability to be a two-sport athlete. And what's really impressive, you can have a lot of two-sport athletes, but to me, it's the high level of play that they are. You know, Emma Schaefer was an all-conference soccer player, and she'll probably be an all-conference basketball player. Brandy Blattner was an All-American this year in volleyball, and last year she was an All-American in basketball. I mean, you're talking about people who are at the top of their games, and they're doing it in two sports that are completely different of each other.
Right.
You know, I don't want to downplay a cross-country runner who excels in track and field, but you are still running. You know, these people are doing completely different things. When you talk about Bob Kinney, he plays hockey in the winter, and then he'll turn around and play baseball in the spring, and he is an all-conference performer in both of those. So being a two-sport athlete is amazing in itself, but to be a two-sport athlete that's that high and that talented is really something special. And we have so many of them at St. Mary's. I think it's really a tribute to them and to the coaching staffs that are able to allow them to do both.
So Donnie, just 30 seconds left here. We mentioned it's an HBC weekend at St. Mary's. Friday night, we'll have the men's hockey game against Gustavus here on TV 25 at 7 p.m. Saturday, basketball doubleheader against St. Olaf. Women at 1 o'clock, the men at 3 o'clock. What else is on campus this weekend?
The women are home on Saturday. They've got Gustavus in the second game of their series. That's a 2 o'clock start at the St. Mary's Ice Arena. And then the women's tennis and men's tennis are on the road. They take on St. Thomas on Sunday at 4:30 up at the University of Minnesota. Track is at Luther for the Luther Invitational, and then swimming is up in the Twin Cities for the Minnesota Challenge. So a busy weekend, a lot of home events. It should be a really great weekend.
From just the pure number of sports competing, this is the busiest time of year.
Absolutely.
So. All right, thanks for watching the Cardinals Nest. Tune in again next week right here on HBC TV 25.